Hey friends, today we're going to drive Trail Ridge Road and I'm going to tell you a story about beauty. When I was completing my BA in creative writing, I took a class about plate tectonics, about the insane pressure and heat that turns dinosaurs into oil and coal into diamonds, a class about mineral identification. Simply put, geology. I remember one class in particular in which the professor was lecturing on the age of the Earth. He mentioned that some people have calculated the dates in the genealogical records of the Bible and, based on that, believe the Earth is, like less than 10,000 years old. There was audible laughter in the lecture hall. Because I am among those who believe in a young Earth, that moment stuck with me. It also cast an interesting light on the fact that one day between classes, as I walked in the geology building, Christ spoke to me. An intriguing choice of locations. He said, "Who makes life?" I laughed within myself. "You," I answered. He was silent, but I understood. My husband and I had been married for 3 years. We both wanted to have children, but even though I wanted a child, it didn't really make sense to me to have children. Until that moment. The next March, we had a beautiful baby boy. All babies had looked the same to me before that night, but this child, he was perfect, beautiful, and amazing. I wrote a very geological poem to commemorate my son's birth. Putty buddy, Play-Doh man, taken in all that you can. Your pre-Pangea molten lava head is shaped by all that is seen, said, and read. About that time, my husband and I looked at each other and asked the question, who else did we miss out on? We didn't want to miss out on anyone else. Though I was thankful for our son, the next year would prove to be the most challenging of my life. I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, which meant no paycheck and no accolades. Not exactly an environment I felt suited to. But something that was positive was that while I was nursing, I could write. While writing my first novel, I attended a writer's conference. Yeah, so it was in this area. All these pictures you're seeing, this is the Estes Park area. That's where the writers' conference was held, and I was scared to death to drive to the writers' conference. It meant I had to drive up the Thompson Canyon, which is very windy. It seemed like it was going to be this big precarious thing. It was actually a lot of fun. Like when I actually was there driving, I discovered it was actually a lot of fun. Kind of funny. So I spent 3 days at this conference. It taught me a lot, but some of those lessons were very hard. I learned that it can be very difficult to get a Christian publishing company interested in a young adult novel. On the final day of the conference, driving back down the canyon, I was not real thrilled about life. I was thankful for what I had learned at the conference, but I was disappointed that I did not leave with a contract. I remember coming around a corner, downshifting, and Christ spoke to me again. He said, "I will make you beautiful in my time." Another message in a geological setting. This time it was sheer cliffs and the sparkling Thompson River flowing between massive boulders. I didn't understand at the time that those two messages were related. What is beauty? I suppose everyone has her own definition, but for me, I believe the standard of beauty is Jesus Christ. A lot of people like the verse Romans 8:28. It says that all things, messed that up. In all things, God works for the good of those who love him. I cringe when people quote that verse. I'm truly afraid that people think that the good thing God has for them is something they want, something they have in mind. This verse only makes sense to me if it's coupled with the next verse, which says that God's great hope for us is to conform us to the image of Jesus Christ. Here's how Romans 28 and 29 read. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. In other words, God can use anything to make you as beautiful as his Son. When Christ promised he would make me beautiful, he was already at work. Did you know that motherhood can make you more beautiful? The pain of childbirth made me look to the Lord for strength outside of myself. Looking to the Lord makes us more beautiful. Psalm 34:5 says, "Those who look to the Lord are radiant." Caring for a baby exposed my selfishness and pushed me to become more loving. Love is beautiful. Selfishness is ugly. I had to cry out to God to help me, and help me some more. Time and time again. And I cried out during the next birth and baby, and the next. Christ did help me, and he was making me more beautiful, but there was something else he was going to use to make me yet more beautiful. But before I tell you about that, I have a question for you. Psalm 31:25 states that the virtuous woman can laugh at the days to come. Do you know why she can laugh at the days to come? Well, I think part of it is she knows that a smile makes her more beautiful. She knows that laughter is good medicine. But most importantly, she knows that God can use anything that comes into her life to make her more beautiful. God spoke to me about beauty when I was driving in the Thompson Canyon. Do you know what created the beauty of the Thompson Canyon? Tragedy. Floods cut the canyon over many years. Floods that have crushed homes and swept them away. Floods that have taken loved ones. There are small signs along the canyon that warn people to climb to safety in the event of a flood. There have been floods. There will be floods. Ironically, this path of childbearing would bring tragedy into my own life. At 16 weeks of pregnancy with our fourth child, I miscarried, something I hadn't even considered was possible. None of my blood relatives had lost a child in this way, at least none that I knew of. How could this happen to me? I realize that not everyone who watches this video will understand the depths of the grief of perinatal loss. How can a person be sad about losing someone she never knew? For a couple who didn't want to miss out on anyone else, it hurts pretty bad to lose a baby. Others of you know very well what perinatal I am saying it right. Perinatal grief is like. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm drudging up an old sorrow for you. I'm sorry that happened to you. Whatever that all involved. I debated not talking about this type of loss in this video because of the nature of it, but it's an important part of my story. I needed to become more sensitive to others experiencing loss, any kind of loss, and losing unborn children is something God has used to help me in this area. I do not believe he caused the death of these children, but I do believe he is able to use it to bring about Christ-like qualities in my life. Recently, I was hospitalized after losing a child at 14 weeks of pregnancy. I didn't want to be in the hospital, but I was, and while I was there, I turned on the TV. I watched two preachers in a row who both spoke from the same Bible passages, 2 Corinthians 11, where Paul is recounting all the horrible sufferings in his life, and Romans 8:18, which says, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing to the glory that is to be revealed to us." Two sermons in a row about the same thing. It didn't feel like a coincidence to me. It felt like something I should pay attention to. There is a word in the Romans 8 passage that is like a beacon of light to me. The word is glory. In my opinion, glory is a whole other level of beauty. The King James uses different phrasing. It talks about the glory that will be revealed in us. God is making us more and more beautiful here, but there in heaven, those of us who have been adopted by God and who have suffered with Christ will be made beautiful, perfect, complete in heaven. But here is what I'm seeing in all of this. It's not about winning some ultimate beauty pageant and living in a resort forever and ever. It's better. Romans 8:16 through 17 says, "The Spirit beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God, and if children, then heirs, heirs of God." At first glance, it sounds like we're going to inherit something from God. I don't think so. I believe that we inherit God himself. That's the glory that will be revealed to us and in us. God Himself. Do I understand that? No, but I embrace it. Thank you for listening to my story. I know that many of you are experiencing your own difficulties. The last thing you feel like doing is laughing at the days to come. But sometimes when we grit our teeth and keep doing the next thing, even when we're hurting, it's like laughing at the days to come. I applaud you for doing this. I'm going to be adding another dimension to Country Girl Drive called the Tough Girl Toolbox. The idea here is ideas for how to build up your family when your world is falling apart. That will be offered here on YouTube, but I think you'll find the same kind of sentiments on my posts, my Country Girl Drive posts for Instagram and Twitter. I feel like I need to talk a little bit about some of the things I talked about in this video. My husband and I were open to having a big family, and that worked out for us. I in no way intended to imply that you need to go about things the way that we did. Talk to your spouse, read the Bible, pray, talk to wise people. These are big issues. Having a family, how many children you're going to have, all those sorts of things. They're very big, very personal issues. Having a large family was agreeable to both of us. Both my husband and I, we felt up for that. I was healthy. Having a lot of pregnancies worked for me physically. However, after we experienced this last loss, I think things have changed since then. I nearly lost my life with this last loss, and I'm 43. It doesn't mean that I couldn't have a healthy pregnancy, but my husband and I didn't feel like we don't feel like it's worth the risk, and so probably we're at a point where we probably will not have any more children. Just other things I wanted to say. For whatever it's worth, in case you're worried about me or whatever, physically I'm doing fine. Emotionally getting better. Guilt pursues me like a wolf. I think that applies to a lot of us, whether we're going through grief or not. But I think when we're in a grieving season of our lives, guilt is a huge part of that, unfortunately. And we have to keep going. We have to keep moving forward. We have to cling to God's word, I think, in those times. As far as perinatal grief goes, I don't know how it is for other people. For me, it usually is a year-long process. I went through this. I guess I've only been through a loss like this one other time when I was around 30, and that process, it was the worst part of that process was about a year. When it got to that year mark, from the time that I'd had the loss, I was kind of down during that time, and then that was kind of the last, I guess, episode of mild depression, or whatever you would want to say. After that, it was just things got a little easier, I guess. If you are experiencing perinatal grief, I really encourage you to get support. The people in your family may or may not know how to respond to you during this time. I know we just recently passed the time of the baby's due date, and that was a really emotional time for me. That was difficult for me to talk about, because I was the only one keeping track of that date, and so I had to explain to my husband, I'm sad right now because this is the baby's due date. And that was really hard for me just to say those words. You may say those words to somebody and they may still not understand why you're hurting. If you find yourself in that position, I would really encourage you to go to those people you can talk to. Strangely, I think your physician may be one of the best people to talk to because they know about support groups in the area for people dealing with perinatal loss. Possibly your church does. I think it kind of depends. Some churches are equipped to know how to deal with these things, and some aren't. I think I recently heard about a ministry in a town in Kansas that was just, that was really focusing on that. That's beautiful. But I know that doesn't exist everywhere. Search for support. I really believe it's out there. But you may have to talk to a few people to find it. Obviously, if you're dealing with deep depression, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or others, go to the emergency room. There is help. There's hope. I really believe that during these times we need to stay in church. I think that we need to pray. I think we need to read God's word. And I really believe that God will give you the strength you need to move forward. I'm going to close with a prayer that God gave to his children in the desert. Just a beautiful, beautiful prayer. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face to you and give you peace.